Bound by Flame was called one of the worst games of 2014. It was a small budget RPG from an indie studio that tried to capture the spirit of The Witcher 2, and in a lot of people's eyes failed completely. They called it buggy, frustrating, lackluster. But were those criticisms actually deserved, or was Bound by Flame just another victim of the hate engine? I decided to find out for myself. Bound by Flame was developed by Spiders, a small indie studio you might know better as the people behind Greedfall. And from the first moment you boot the game up, the inspiration is clear. This is their take on a budget version of The Witcher 2. I don't say that as a criticism. The DNA is just kind of visible everywhere, and that ambition is actually kind of admirable for a studio this size. We play as Vulcan, a mercenary caught in a war against the Ice Lords who command an army of the dead trying to take over the world. The specifics of why they want this are never really explained, but the setup works well enough. While protecting a group of mystics doing a ritual, Vulcan gets possessed by a fire demon, one powerful enough to stop the Ice Lords. The most interesting idea in the game is the morality system. The demon possessing Vulcan will try to convince you to make the darker choice when presented with one, and the more you listen to him, the more you're physically transformed. Horns will start growing, your appearance shifts, you get these cool Sith-like eyes. It's the kind of mechanic that sounds cool on paper, but when you actually put it in practice, it kind of falls apart. I listened to the demon exactly 2 times during my entire playthrough, and by the end of the game, my character had fully transformed into him. The only way to avoid this is to make every single good choice throughout the entire game, which makes the whole system feel less like a morality mechanic and more like a trap you didn't know you were in. The choices also have this same problem. They feel like they should matter, but they don't. You can choose to pledge yourself to help the Elf Prince retake a city, or listen to your captain. Either way, you end up traveling to that same location doing the same quests. Later in Act 2, you're given the choice to fight a concubine for its power or save an army. I saved the army, but yet I still fought the concubine. The army was never mentioned again. But a game can survive weak and meaningless choices. What is harder to forgive is bad writing. There's a moment in the final act where a party member can betray Vulcan. It turns out this companion used to be an Ice Lord. You would know this if you actually bothered to talk with her. The only problem is I didn't. So when the cutscene followed and acted like I already knew this information, I was just sitting behind my computer screen confused because I had no clue what the hell they were talking about. Speaking of talking, the dialogue across this game is just bland. The voice acting ranges from meh at best to bad at worst. And if you're expecting anything close to the richness of The Witcher 2, the game Bound by Flame is desperately trying to emulate, you will be disappointed. Then there's the final boss. I'm not afraid to admit that early on in the game, I lowered the difficulty to easy because the camera and enemy clustering made the normal difficulty unfair. Not challenging, but just unfair. You can be surrounded by a group of enemies and dead in a few hits before you've had a chance to react. Even on the easiest difficulty, making it through to the end of the game was a challenge, but I managed to do so without breaking a controller. But that rage almost boiled over during the final boss fight. The final boss took me 2 hours to beat. 2 hours on the easiest difficulty. There's no way to stock up on materials before the fight, so whatever you have going in is all you've got. And there's a mini boss fight immediately before it, which drains those supplies farther. The only way I ended up beating the boss was through a cheesing method I stumbled onto by accident. This wasn't because I sucked at this game, even though I was playing it on the easiest difficulty. It was because of the increased difficulty spike. I'm not talking about the boss just being a little bit harder than the other bosses you fought. I am talking about balls to the wall, destroying your controller hard. And when I finally beat him, I never had the moment I usually get when I defeat difficult bosses, the one where I raise my hand up in the air and say, fuck yes. Instead, I end up saying to myself, thank God this game is finally over. But here's the thing, despite all of that, there was something about the combat that kept pulling me back. It's simple, it's unpolished, and it can feel cheap, but learning enemy movesets, figuring out which weapons work and which enemies was a combat loop that I enjoyed. Even when everything everything else around it was letting me down. So with all that in mind, the bland dialogue, the broken morality system, a final boss that nearly broke me and drove me insane, did Bound by Flame actually deserve the hate it got? The mediocre reviews were fair. Calling it a 5 out of 10 is honest, but a 30 out of 100 from Hyper Magazine, one of Australia's longest running gaming publications, that's a prime example of the hate engine doing what it does best. The first problem is the benchmark. Reviewers were comparing Bound by Flame to Dragon Age and The Witcher 2, games made by studios with vastly larger budgets and decades of RPG experience. Spiders was a small studio making their version of The Witcher 2 on a fraction of the budget. Judging them by the standard you would judge these bigger RPGs isn't criticism, it's just plain wrong. One review by GameSpot claimed the game proceeds to ruin its promise in combat with a series of mind-boggling choices that suck all the fun out of battles. The only thing is that the choices don't affect the battles at all. That review is describing a mechanic that doesn't exist in the game being reviewed, which is another reason entirely why you shouldn't trust professional reviewers. And the user score tells the same divided story. Some people found enjoyment in it, others hated it. That division alone suggests this wasn't an objectively terrible game. It was just a flawed one that got caught in a pylon it didn't fully deserve. Full disclosure here, I never played this at launch, so I can't speak to its original state. What I can tell you is that for the price you can get it for today, it's worth at least a single playthrough. Bound by Flame had a great morality system it couldn't execute properly, a story with real potential it never fully realized, and combat that was flawed but acceptable. It wasn't the worst game of 2014, it wasn't close to that. It was just simply a budget RPG that reached for something ambitious and landed somewhere in the middle. The mediocre verdicts were earned, but the burial of the game wasn't. I went into this game with nothing but curiosity, and after the first 15 or so minutes, which I had to play on my PS5 because Steam's version of this game would not work with any controller I owned, I thought that this was going to be a very bad experience. But I was surprised when I found out it wasn't. And here's something I only found out after finishing the game. Bound by Flame apparently has a romance system that I was completely unaware of. The reason why was because the companions are so boring, I didn't even bother talking to them unless I absolutely had to. Now, normally I would say that is on me for not exploring the game as much as I should have, but I also think part of the fault lays with the developers for not making the companions interesting enough to make you want to talk with them. Bound by Flame didn't make me angry, it didn't make me impressed, or it didn't make me feel any profound sense or feeling of awe. It left me feeling nothing, which honestly might be the most damning thing I can say about this game. It's not the worst game of 2014, it's not even the worst RPG ever like some people say it is. It's just a game that's worth a single playthrough, and honestly, sometimes that's enough. But what do you think? Have you played Bound by Flame? Do you think this hate is deserved or it's all overblown? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this kind of content, consider subscribing. On a side note, if you heard my rooster during the last section of this video, I apologize. He's kind of being a bit annoying. But with that, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out.